When I did, I saw Nikki, my best friend, standing in front of me. She had 2 boxes of my favorite pizza and a balloon bouquet. "Happy birthday!" shouted my friend right from the doorway. "You didn't think I'd leave you alone, did you?" I was so happy I had Nikki at least. We poured Coke into wine glasses and watched our favorite TV show together. I didn't even notice that a couple of hours had passed when the front door suddenly opened and I saw a couple of teenagers. It took my brain a few seconds to realize that I was looking at my parents. "Surprise!" shouted my mom cheerfully. I stood by the sofa, frozen, and I didn't know what to say. My mom had colorful dreadlocks on her head, and my dad had dyed his long hair and even his beard blue and green. But that wasn't the end of it. Both of them had new piercings and a couple of tattoos on their faces. More than that, it's a nightmare. They even had ear tunnels now. I felt like I was looking at 15-year-old TikTok bloggers. "Well, do you like it?" asked my mom coquettishly, pointing at her new look. "Don't worry, the tattoos are temporary, but everything else is here for good," she laughed. I looked at Nikki and her face contorted in surprise. I thought my parents had completely lost their minds. Even without really congratulating me on my birthday, my mother started to tell me how they'd met some cool pro cosplayers and decided to change their looks right on the spot. It turns out that was exactly what they'd always been dreaming of. To say that I was upset would be an understatement. Not only did they not give a damn about me, but they'd also managed to humiliate me in front of my best friend on my birthday. That night, I packed up and I went to sleep over at Nikki's. I didn't want to see my mom or dad for a while. Only when I was at my friend's house did I remember that her mother was a psychologist. And then I thought, maybe that was my chance. I asked Ms. Owen if I could force my parents into therapy or treatment, but it turns out that nothing would work if they didn't agree. And that would never happen, because my parents thought they were absolutely normal. But Nikki's mom suggested another option. I could come over for dinner with my parents so that she could talk to them and see how bad things were. And my parents, well, they were just ecstatic about the invitation. Of course, I didn't tell them anything about the psychotherapy. They put on what must have been their freakiest suits and went with me to have dinner at the Owens house. And at first, everything was going great. My parents were acting friendly and even relatively decent. There were no silly jokes or filming videos for TikTok. But everything suddenly changed when Ms. Owen started asking my mom and dad questions about why they look like that. "Why do you even care what we look like?" my mom suddenly replied in an icy tone. Ms. Owen said that my parents had simply misunderstood her, but my parents weren't about to back down. "If freedom of expression scares you so much, then I think you should think about your own problems," snapped my dad as he stood up from the table. I was just sitting there with my mouth wide open, and I didn't know what to do. "We're leaving," said my mom, and she headed for the door. I had no choice but to follow them, even though I very much wanted to die inside. My mission had completely failed. But that wasn't the worst part. The next day, I went to school and realized that Nikki didn't want to talk to me anymore. She'd been willing to listen to me whine about my freakish parents, but when her own mother got involved, everything changed completely. On one hand, I understood it. I understood her decision. But on the other hand, I also understood my own parents in a way. Miss Owens really hadn't been very delicate about it that night. A few weeks passed like that until another crazy thing happened. One day, I was leaving school with no idea what was about to happen, when all of a sudden, oh no, I saw my parents right at the entrance. In any other situation, I would have just pretended that I didn't know them, but there was really no way getting around this. They were screaming my name loudly for some reason, and filming it all on camera. I felt like literally everyone was laughing at me and pointing fingers at my freakish parents. I'd had enough. I couldn't live like that any longer. I ran out to the backyard in tears and left the school grounds through the football field. I didn't even want to see my parents. I hated them so much. At home, my parents tried to explain that they just wanted to film a cool video for their social networks because everyone loved creative parents like them. But I didn't want to listen to them. I was supposed to make a speech at the school presidential election, so I went up to my room and I started to prepare. I decided that it would be better if I concentrated on getting the work done and simply tried to ignore the antics of my family. And finally, the day of the elections came. I couldn't calm down since I'd woken up. I had a great speech prepared, but I found it so hard to speak in front of an audience, so I'd learned the whole thing by heart. Then I put on my best suit that I'd ironed the day before I went to school. I hadn't even told my parents about the election. After all, they would have forgotten about it anyway. When I was finally on stage, giving a speech in front of a bunch of students and teachers, my hands were shaking. I was trying to find at least one familiar face in the crowd to feel more confident, and I suddenly saw Nikki. My friend still wasn't talking to me, but she looked friendly. She gave me a kind smile, and I felt relieved. In the end, I gave a really good speech. I only stumbled once, but overall, I'd done a great job. However, as soon as I said the last word, suddenly, someone in the audience said my name loud. I searched for the person with my eyes, and I saw my dad. He was standing in his favorite striped suit, and my mom was filming him on camera. Oh my God, I felt so ashamed. My first instinct was just to run off the stage and pretend like I didn't know them. But for some reason, I literally froze in my place. Victoria is my daughter, and I can't even tell you how proud of her I am, said my dad, while all of the eyes in the audience were on him. I held my breath. So, I'll simply sing a song about her. What? Was this a nightmare or was this reality? My heart started pounding and my dad took a deep breath. And when he started to sing, I was amazed. Of course, I had known that my dad used to be in a rock band when he was young, but I never would have thought he was good. Of course, that didn't really make me feel any better. I wished for the ground to swallow me up anyway. After that, I would definitely not be winning any elections. I mean, what do you think? When my dad finally finished his ballad, the audience burst into applause. I hadn't expected that. I even saw some mothers shyly wiping away their tears. But I was still angry at my parents for drawing all of the attention to themselves. As usual, I could never have imagined what would happen next, though. That evening, I was unanimously elected as student president, and everyone immediately decided they wanted to be my friend. Of course, no one else had such cool parents. Well, and the video of my dad singing got several million views on TikTok. At that moment, I realized that maybe I just really needed to accept my parents for who they were. At least now we have a common page, and we inspire many people to not be afraid to be themselves.